a demon-possessed daughter is set free. This is that deliverance. This is Jesus being the deliverer. Let's read those verses. And from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered a house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, For this statement you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter. And she went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. I wanted you to hear the words from Matthew. We're studying Mark, but Matthew records these words, O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire. Okay, continuing on the ones we've already done. This is the only time it's recorded that Jesus left Israel. This is the only time it's recorded that Jesus left Israel. And then going down, we're going to see her faith overcame several obstacles. They're both here in Mark and in Matthew 15, where the story is repeated. Here's those obstacles. She was a Gentile, not a Jew. She was a woman in a society dominated by men. Satan was against her. Wait a minute, how do we know that? He was possessing the daughter and didn't want to leave. The disciples wanted Jesus to send her away. That's in Matthew 15. They don't even talk to her. They tell Jesus, she's bothering us, send her away. That tends to be their answer. The people are hungry, send them away. Okay, so at first even, among these obstacles, it looks like even Jesus ignored her. And that's your new blank. It looks like even Jesus ignored her. In the Matthew version, you see he says nothing. And it's like the disciples are you deaf, Lord? Aren't you tired of hearing this woman? Send her away. Because he looked like he was ignoring her. And then he says these strange words that when you read them, if you're just getting to know Jesus, you might go, did Jesus really say that? It's not right to give the bread for the children to the dogs. And to those that sitting around that knew that the Jews called the Gentiles dogs, we may think that's what he's doing. And we might think that's not Jesus. He doesn't talk like that, but he had purpose in what he said. First, we should notice that when Jesus said children, that's your blank, when Jesus said children, he was referring to the Jews who had a special father-child relationship with God. All through the history of the Old Testament, all through Israel's history, they had this special father-child relationship. I have loved you as a son, as a child. His relationship. And so when Jesus says, let the children be fed first, it's pretty obvious to anyone listening at that time that he's referring to the Jews. But by using this little parable or analogy, we understand that better. The children, you feed the children before the dogs, right? Please. Use your finances first to feed your children before your dogs. Okay, good. If you need help understanding that, talk to me. Okay. And it's not right to take the children's bread that they need and throw it to the dogs. Now, here's the difference from what the people around him were used to. The word he used for dogs, which is right under the word children there in your list, the next blank is dogs. Yes, it referred to the Gentiles. But he did not use the word, apparently they had different words, that he did not use the word for dog that meant dirty scavenger dogs. He used a word which that's what the Jews called them, but little pet puppies. So even though they weren't children, they were a very much loved pet. They weren't the children, but they were loved. By using that word, instead of dirty scavenger dogs, which had nothing to do with belonging in the household, he used this word to refer to them, little pet puppies. Yeah, they're not children, but I still care about them, is perhaps what was feeling getting across. So then, what did the woman say, for pity's sake, that brought on Jesus' good response? First off, she did not deny the special place the Jews had in God's plan. She did not say, why should the children get it first? We need it too. She didn't deny that those children, the Jewish people, had a special place in God's eyes. She didn't deny that. Secondly, she didn't try to put herself and her need above or equal to them. Oh, certainly I'm just as good as they are. Certainly I have every right to whatever they have. She didn't do that. All she asked for were a few crumbs. She didn't ask for the bread. She asked for the crumbs. She asked for the leftovers. What she said is, I know these are your people, but surely after you do all you can for them, there's a little left. And I only need you to have a crumb, and it's enough to heal my daughter, to deliver her. And that was a very humble, filled with faith statement. So here's my question. What is so great then about her faith? With that one sentence, yes, she says. Yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And you might say, and Jesus said that was great faith? Here's why. First thing, she accepted her place. So she was humble. Your blank is humble. She accepted her place. I think sometimes our struggle with humility is not that we think bad of ourselves, but we don't actually have a realistic view of ourselves. It's not that we have to think less of ourselves. We just have to be realistic in our unworthiness for what God might offer us. Humbleness is a hard thing to learn, but Jesus promises blessing for the humble. He gives grace to the humble. He resists the proud. That's one of my pet things, is that I think we need to It isn't just that he doesn't give grace to the proud. It says he resists them. Or in some verses, it says he opposes the proud. You not only don't get grace, you get God against you. So really, pride is not something we should pride ourselves on. We should try to be humble, learn to be humble. The second thing is she used his words. She used his words, so she trusts in his word. She trusts in his word. Even if his words didn't seem very kind, and even if his words didn't seem to answer her need, she used them back to him because she said, he will honor his own words. And we can trust God's word. Whatever he is in his word, we can trust it. Along with my batteries for my hearing aids. That's why I'm trying to remember to get them all the way home. We can trust his word. Whatever his words are, even if we don't understand them, we don't see how it applies, we don't even see how it meets our need. That's why I encourage us to read our word, read the Bible every day, even if you say that has nothing to do with me today. But it's God's word, and we can trust his words. And she did that. Thirdly, she was persistent in her request. She had been persistent in asking. She was determined. If it's God's power, why does our determination make any difference? because Jesus says it does. When he tells the parable of the woman and the unjust judge, who she was trying to get her need taken care of, and he didn't care what men or God thought, but because she was persistent. And when Jesus told that parable, it says in the Bible that he told it so that we would pray and not give up. She was determined. Are we determined in our prayers? Or do we go, oh, I'm saying it over and over again, and not really take the idea that I'm being persistent and determined because I believe God will answer it. And lastly, she believed even crumbs would be enough. And that's her faith. That's her faith. She was humble. She trusted his word. She was determined, but she had faith. I don't need a whole piece of bread. I don't need all your power. Your power created the universe. I just need a crumb. You know, in Indonesian, the word for small is kecil. Kecil. It's not a hard word. But when they want to say something is really tiny, they go kecil. And they go to the edge of their pinky. And they go kecil. They'll be in the middle of a sentence. They want to say something tiny. They go, it's just kecil. Selalu kecil. And that's it. Only a tiny bit. She knows that's the great faith. That even leftovers will be enough if they're from Jesus. Great faith, then, for us to learn, comes from a humble heart that takes God at his word, believes in his power, and keeps praying until an answer comes. I'll read those again. Great faith comes from a humble heart that takes God at his word, believes in his power, and keeps praying until an answer comes. Have you heard about push prayer? Have any of you heard that? Push in prayer. Pray until something happens. We tend to pray until we're tired of praying. Doesn't spell anything. Pray until something happens. So those from that lady, from that woman, that foreigner, being called as one who had great faith, we look at these four things and we find out how we too can have great faith. All right, let's go to page 3. A deaf and mute man is healed. Interesting that we talked about needing deliverance. We just heard a story about deliverance, and now we see a story about healing. And that was many of us. And I'm sure some of you said a different word so you wouldn't repeat healing, but you did have some healing needed. Just saying. Okay, verses 31 to 37. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, in the region of Decapolis. And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears, and after spitting, touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed, and he said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. They had a hard word for opened. And his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. And Jesus charged them to tell no one. But the more he charged them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. That's just like us. I told you not to do that, and you're doing it more. Yeah. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, he has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. So I want you to notice something about this. Only Mark records this miracle in Decapolis. Only is your blank. Only Mark. Why? Well, Decapolis was very much like Rome away from Rome. It was a place where a lot of Romans went to. When they weren't in Rome, they were in Decapolis. It means 10 cities. But so it's kind of very Roman and not Jewish. Remember, Mark is more directed toward the non-Jewish people, like Romans. So it would be a more significant miracle to them because it happened in a place that they were prevalent. So that's part of why probably only Mark recorded it. But we are given some details about unusual things Jesus did. I think this is the strangest miracle. Well, the next one's kind of strange too, but I don't know if it's the next one or the next one after the next one. I can't remember. No, not the next one. Anyway, he took him aside privately. We haven't seen that too much. He usually does the miracle right there with people all watching. Sometimes he took him privately. It says he took him aside from the crowd. He put his fingers into his ears. I assume it means the man's ears, and that Jesus didn't put them in his own ears. So that didn't seem that odd because his ears need loosing. Maybe it was just a wax thing. I don't know. Just know he put his fingers in his ears. He spit. Jesus spit. Now we don't know where he spit. We don't know if he spit at somebody, if he spit on his hand or fingers, because the next thing he does is after spitting, he touched his tongue. Now I assume again it's the man's tongue, because it's his ears, his tongue. You can find that makes some sense because he's mute. He has a speech impediment. The spit is the bad one. The spit is the strange one. After spitting. Then he looked up to heaven, and he didn't always do that, but he did do that other times, not just this time. And he sighed. Now, a sigh is actually a very good thing. I even read something once that said when you're stressed or when you're feeling badly, just take a minute and sigh deeply. Do you sigh? Does it often go with head shaking? I don't know why Jesus sighed, and more than that, I don't know why we're told he sighed. But we are. He sighed, and he sighed and said, "Be opened. Be opened." He looked up to heaven, sighed, and said, "Be opened." If you're looking up to heaven and you say something, it could be thought that you're saying it to heaven. I don't know. And he said an Aramaic word, and it's recorded as that word. The writer could have just said, "Be opened," and not done the other word. Otherwise, every time Jesus says something, they could put it in Greek or Aramaic, but they don't. This is a rare time when he says, they actually write it in the, Mark was written in Greek, original text is in Greek, and so he writes one word in Aramaic. Don't know. And said, "Be opened," or "Be released." I don't know why Jesus did these things. Let me just say, the question is, why did he do them? That's the first question. And the second one is, okay, he could have done them, but on every miracle, but why are we told this time? Why give us the details? And here's your answer. We don't know. We don't know why in this particular case we get all these details. Maybe those things mean more to a Roman than they do to us. Maybe even that word is special. We say some words for no reason, apparently, in another language. Voila. Why do we say voila? And it's done, because that's the old magic term. Abracadabra. Not our language. Eureka. That's our state motto. It's not an English word, except now that we call it, meaning I found it. There are times we just say a foreign word for no apparent reason. And that's what we all call it. We all refer to something. And perhaps that word was like open sesame, because he said, be opened. Why do we say open sesame? Do you guys know? What? Sesame, but that isn't what it is. It's open sesame from what? Aladdin and the 70 thieves, or whatever number it is. 40 thieves. 40 thieves. Yes. Yes. Um, does it say that? He might have been Roman. We don't know what he was. The Syrophoenician woman, we're specifically told she was not Jewish. And the Roman centurion and different ones. But this one we're not told. Being in Decapolis, it might be he was, but it also might be that that word meant something to him. I don't know why. Do we really want a God we can figure out? Think about it. That's your last point here. Do we really want a God we can figure out? Think about that. Think about, man, I don't. I don't want a God I can figure out, because then I don't need him. If I can figure out God completely, I'm better than God. Who would want to have a God that you're better than? That's a pet God. Isaiah 55:8-9 remind us. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. This is what we have to say when we read these details. Why did you do that? Why are we told? Picture Jesus saying it. For my thoughts are not like your thoughts. Neither are my ways your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. I'm God and you're not. Adjust. Maybe we need to hear that more. I'm God. He is God and we are not. We have to adjust.